first time Carmen felt it, the real gut-deep sense that her time was being measured in meetings rather than milestones, was during an all-hands where her name didn't even make it into the footnotes. 15 years of code, architecture, sleepless nights babysitting server migrations, and rebuilding the billing logic from scratch after that one New Year's Eve crash. And the new guy, Blake Radner, slides into his custom Herman Miller chair like he invented JavaScript himself. He called it tech debt cleanup, but what he meant was get your crusty legacy fingerprints off my shiny new roadmap. Her calendar went from mentoring sessions and infra planning to back-to-back alignment calls, where the only thing aligning was her patience with HR's idea of diplomacy. One by one, her direct reports were reassigned, some under the guise of career growth. Others just disappeared, like devlog entries lost in a rebased Git branch. Carmen had built the damn bones of this company. When she started, the front end was still jQuery spaghetti, and the back end had more duct tape than logic. She brought order. She was the system. Every deployment script, every API gateway, every automated rollback, her silent fingerprint lay beneath it all like fossilized coral in a tech reef no one cared to dive into anymore. Then came the Slack emojis. The passive-aggressive fire reactions on announcements Blake made after ripping out her modules. Cleaning up the Jurassic layer. He joked once in the engineering channel. Carmen didn't reply. She just stared at her terminal for a long minute, cracked her neck, and typed a quiet commit on a repo no one remembered existed. And hey, real quick while you're here, I know 97% of you listen to these stories without subscribing. No judgment, I'd ghost a subscribe button too if it looked like every other desperate pop-up on the internet. But if this story's hitting you even a little, toss me that sub. I'm clawing my way to my first 10,000 subscribers, and your click is the kind of legacy code I do want to keep. Back to Carmen. Her badge still beeped her through doors, but even the office coffee machine had been upgraded and now only recognized the new exec team's RFID mugs. Little things added up. Her desk was quietly moved further from the team she used to lead. Her requests in Jira got passed over. She'd ping folks for review and get ghosted like a Craigslist meetup. Blake was everything Carmen hated in code and people. Shiny, over-engineered, fast-talking with zero fallback strategy. He once demoed a serverless deployment during a Thursday stand-up and broke staging for 4 hours. Called it agile failure. Carmen called it Tuesday. She kept to herself more and more, sat in meetings with a muted mic and eyes like closed tabs. Her presence turned ghostly, still listed on org charts but spoken of in past tense. Didn't Carmen build that pipeline? Oh yeah, she had a system for that, not sure how it works now. She watched as the new devs rewrote modules she knew were still running in live prod. No backups, no versioning, just swagger and buzzwords. They bragged about killing monoliths without realizing the monoliths were the only thing keeping their container circus from collapsing. The final straw wasn't big. It wasn't even dramatic. It was a Tuesday night, 9:17 p.m. She was reviewing logs, out of habit mostly, when she noticed a fork in a legacy Git repo she'd built 10 years ago. Someone had cloned it and used parts of her infrastructure in a new demo labeled Q3 Hackathon Prep. It had her old naming conventions, her dependency structure, even some of her comments verbatim. Blake was standing on the scaffolding she built and pretending he laid the foundation. That's when Carmen opened an old file directory named Retired Scripts. Nested inside was a shell script labeled failsafe.sh. She hadn't touched it in 8 years, but it still opened instantly in her terminal. The countdown blared across the massive screens. Hack the Future 2025 in glitchy neon font, and somewhere in the crowd of engineers, interns, board members, and tech influencers, Carmen sat with her badge flipped backward and her soul vibrating like an overloaded circuit. Blake took the stage like a TED Talk reject high on his own pitch deck. White sneakers, skinny jeans, a company hoodie with the sleeves pushed up like he was allergic to humility. Livestream chat was already crawling with VC bootlickers and wannabe founders spamming rocket emojis and let's go. Carmen had helped build the backend infrastructure powering this damn stream, and now she couldn't even find a seat near the front row. Welcome to the new era, Blake beamed into the mic. Today, we showcase what happens when you stop patching old tires and build a rocket instead. The crowd clapped. Carmen felt her stomach pull taut. Big shout out to our dev team, Blake continued, pacing like a Silicon Valley preacher, for helping us excavate the legacy code. Seriously, felt like we were digging through a fossil site. I think we actually found a T-Rex glass in there. Laughter. He held for effect. And buried somewhere in the Jurassic layer, we found the old API routes. Still running, believe it or not. Like flipping a rotary phone and hoping to get Wi-Fi. Chat exploded. Skull Jurassic El Maua was Carmen the Dino. Imagine still using PHP #Jurassic stack. She sat frozen. Not out of fear, but out of something more raw. Betrayal laced with absurdity. That code, that Jurassic layer, it processed millions in transactions, scaled under Black Friday load spikes, and recovered from 3D DOS attacks while Blake was still debugging dropdowns in college. Her hands stayed in her lap. She smiled just enough to trick the nearest camera operator into thinking she was part of the inside joke. But her eyes didn't move from the stage. They were surgical now, dissecting him, measuring every smug breath. Blake had just made a mistake bigger than his ego. He humiliated the architect in her own cathedral. She opened her laptop, not the sleek new one with all the corporate tools, but the old ThinkPad with the cracked corner and the custom key mappings, one she never turned in after the last hardware refresh. It hummed to life like a muscle memory. Inside her dev folder was a directory labeled Archive Hell, and tucked inside that, a config file she hadn't opened since Obama was still in office. Failsafe SH. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't fast, it wasn't even documented, which was unthinkable for Carmen, but it worked. The script didn't destroy. That would have been too crude, too obvious. No, it rerouted. It severed trust in silence. It would isolate compute nodes from each other, kill external DNS routing, and reset the API gateway cache in such a way that the next update cycle would brick everything, without a single fatal error log to trace. She hovered over the file, didn't run it, not yet. Back on stage, Blake had pulled up slides of performance metrics that Carmen knew were faked. She recognized the same inflated concurrency graphs they'd photoshopped for an investor call in Q1. Her name had been quietly removed from the Git commits that built the foundation. The man was standing on scaffolding made from her bones and calling himself an architect. She opened a second tab. Inside it, a resignation letter, one she'd drafted 3 months ago after her last performance review got lost in transition during the merger. She stared at it for a long time. The cursor blinked like a dare. Then she hit delete. No, not like this, not in silence. She turned back to failsafe SH and added one line, echo triggered by Jurassic, just in case anyone ever figured it out. Carmen showed up to work the Monday after the hackathon with a Tupperware full of chili, a neutral cardigan, and a face smoother than null coalescing logic. If her blood had been boiling that weekend, you wouldn't know it. She smiled through the open office banter, chuckled at a junior dev's stand-up joke about refactoring the Raptor code, and even gave Blake a polite nod as he breezed by smelling like cinnamon protein powder and unchecked narcissism. But inside, she was already reverse engineering her revenge. First came the benchmarks. Blake had been parading charts around like a damn data magician, showing 15% latency improvements and 40% reduction in cold starts. Carmen, curious, pulled the logs. She knew what real efficiency looked like. She had lived through database wars, latency hellscapes, and the dark days of Node 6. These charts weren't real. They were cherry-picked snapshots of sandbox environments, artificially trimmed response times, even one graph that had been rerun 4 times with disabled logs before it hit acceptable metrics. She didn't rage. She just saved them quietly. Screenshotted Slack convos, downloaded raw Grafana exports, created a folder titled Meteorite Evidence. Then came the licenses. Carmen noticed the warnings first, 2 internal microservices throwing up flags in the dependency scanner. She ran them locally. Sure enough, someone had integrated a third-party message queue plugin under a GPL license. Meaning, if it went to prod, they'd legally be forced to open source the entire core. Whoever did it had no clue. Probably thought GPL was some kind of GPU setting. Carmen flagged it on a Jira ticket with a smiley face. It got marked won't fix in under 6 minutes. Next, architecture. She reviewed the diagram Blake's team had posted to Confluence, detailing their revolutionary refactor of her original system. It was worse than she imagined. They'd broken her monolith into 47 microservices with overlapping responsibilities, documented handshakes, and a Redis cluster acting as a state manager. Redis for state. And they still relied on her original auth pipeline. No one had touched it, they just wrote wrappers around it like putting Christmas lights on a landmine. Blake's team wasn't building a new system. They were cannibalizing her old one and pretending it was innovation. Carmen knew it wouldn't hold, not under load, not under scrutiny, and definitely not under a real user base. Oh, she began to prepare. First, she located her old backup scripts. Encrypted bash files she'd written years ago to sync snapshots of core infrastructure to an external S3 instance outside the org's standard AWS tree. It had been authorized back when the company still trusted her like a surgeon trusts a scalpel. The keys still worked. Every night she scheduled incremental snapshots, code, logs, emails, Slack archives, performance dashboards, stored under innocuous file names like archive presentation notes and UX retrospective MP4. Just in case. Next, she re-enabled access to the dev tools no one even remembered existed, an old terminal-based dashboard written in Go she'd whipped up during the Great Azure outage of 2018. It interfaced directly with their container orchestration layer, long since deprecated, but never fully decommissioned. Blake's team had disabled the UI. He never touched the core service. Classic mistake. With one command, Carmen could see the real node statuses, the hidden container logs, the error rates that never made it to the polished dashboards Blake shared in demos. It was like pulling back the curtain and finding a toddler in a wizard costume screaming about Kubernetes. She didn't sabotage anything. Not yet. Instead, she added a few conditionals, modified an old script to watch for a specific deployment tag. If it hit prod without her manual override, it would send her a ping with the node map and run a checksum against the last stable state. Not kill switch stuff, just sentry mode. To her team, Carmen remained the quietly dependable veteran, patient with confused junior devs, helpful in Slack threads, calm in design reviews. She complimented code quality she knew was trash. She offered to pair program when she could have done it faster blindfolded. But inside, she was a pressure cooker waiting to hiss. And every time she heard someone call Blake a visionary, she pressed her fingers against her temple like she was soothing a migraine. In reality, she was calculating. They thought they were building something new. She knew she was building something inevitable. 2 weeks out from the final hackathon demo, Carmen pinged Blake in Slack with the cheeriest passive aggression she could manage without triggering HR's keyword filter. Hey Blake, noticed the demo info's been a bit twitchy, happy to lend a hand if y'all need a legacy whisperer winking face. It took him 7 minutes to reply. Classic alpha delay tactic. She imagined him sipping some nootropic mushroom sludge and thinking let the dinosaur beg to feel useful. Appreciate it, Carmen. We're mostly good but feel free to poke around if you've got time. I'll set you up with read-only. Read-only, how cute. Within the hour, she was granted limited permissions to a staging mirror, sandboxed, restricted to static asset logs, and totally unaware that she still had access to the DevOps vault through an old config runner they'd never disabled. Blake's team thought access management was a matter of toggling roles in the GUI. Carmen knew better. She had built the original role inheritance system, and it didn't revoke old CLI token paths unless manually scrubbed. The door had been left cracked, and Carmen still had the keys. She didn't make noise. No prod changes, no alerts, just quiet shadow walking through the bones of her old infrastructure, checking server health and file diffs like she was brushing dust off a crime scene. What she found wasn't just sloppiness, it was fraud. The demo stack that Blake had hyped to investors, the AI-powered smart scaling architecture, it was faker than his LinkedIn endorsements. Carmen traced the staging logs to a folder labeled /prerender/May24/. Inside were JSON files with timestamps that didn't align with any live queries. Further digging led to a render template py file that output pre-baked responses for the front end to simulate load balancing decisions. The whole system was basically a puppet show. User input triggered canned responses, dressed up to look dynamic. And the kicker? The emails. She wasn't snooping. Technically, she still had access to the shared info planning label in Blake's inbox, a forgotten ghost from pre-merger days. Someone on his team had accidentally tagged one of the demo prep threads. Carmen clicked. From Blake Radner to exec demo at company.com subject. AI load demo real-time inference is too volatile for the stream. Use the stable output from May 14 and fake the traffic shape if needed. Just make sure the chart moves when he clicks the button lol. LOL indeed. Carmen stared at the email. She didn't rage, she didn't scream. She just leaned back in her chair, cracked her knuckles, and laughed. Quiet, bitter, involuntary laughter that startled the intern sitting across from her. She waved it off with a cough and a nod toward her monitor. Old code-based nostalgia, she lied. You wouldn't understand. That night, she created a new local repo, Blake Museum. Inside it, she started building a curated timeline, log files, Slack exports, test diffs, screenshots of deployment mismatches, and of course, the email thread. Each folder labeled like chapters in a true crime documentary. Chapter 1 Hackathon Kickoff / Chapter 2, The Lie Engine / Chapter 3, Slack laughs back / she marked commit timestamps and began writing annotations. Not legal style, not formal. Just commentary, like a tour guide through someone else's delusions. And while the demo team scrambled to stitch together more duct tape abstractions around her original infrastructure, Carmen quietly re-enabled logging scripts from a monitoring tool she wrote 5 years ago, a service so obsolete, nobody even remembered it existed. It now sat quietly, recording every runtime anomaly and storing it in encrypted blocks across 3 distributed nodes, not covered by the current observability tools. The best part? If you looked for it, it would show as offline. But if you pinged it with curl/status, token equals ogre, it grinned back with everything it saw. Carmen didn't want to sabotage the hackathon. Not yet. She wanted to watch it. She wanted to watch Blake's entire Tower of Babel wobble on its own ego, hollow as his LinkedIn testimonials and just as doomed. It happened in the hallway near the snack table, like all great revolutions, quiet, accidental, and wrapped in the stink of vending machine beef jerky. Jared, the youngest backend hire, hovered near Carmen like a broken CI pipeline, unsure whether to fail loudly or silently drift away. She was sipping burned breakroom coffee from a mug that said Stack Overflowed. Not my problem, and scrolling through her kill switch script for the 7th time looking for weaknesses. She didn't look up. You ever spin up dummy clients just to look busy? Jared asked, too casual. Carmen arched a brow, defined busy. He exhaled, fidgeted, checked the hallway, then leaned in like a confessional priest at a Flask meetup. Blake wants us to simulate 10,000 user sessions during the hackathon demo, he said, voice low. Not load test. Simulate. Fake endpoints, auto-clicking bots, canned error rates, all running off a looped dataset from March. Carmen set her mug down slowly like it was wired to explode. You're creating ghost traffic, Jared grimaced. Yeah, with hard-coded jitter. No logs. Blake said it'll look more real if we throw in a few random 500 threes. There it was. The moment her decision metastasized from vague vengeance to crystallized clarity. This wasn't incompetence anymore. This was a con job with her legacy code as the foundation and her silence as the signature. If she didn't act, she'd be complicit. If she did, well, there'd be no coming back. Carmen smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just coldly. Thanks, Jared, she said, clapping him once on the shoulder. You just saved me some typing. That night, she lit a candle, not metaphorically. An actual blackened votive from her desk drawer, something she'd kept from the Great Migration of 16 when prod crashed for 26 hours and the only solution came to her during a blackout meditation and a fifth of Jameson. Ritual matters. She opened failsafe sh. Up until now, the script had been dormant. A series of disconnected modules waiting for a trigger that never came. She rewired it, not to detonate on schedule or signal, not to burn everything. No. This time, it would pause the illusion. Lock traffic from the fakes. Segregate real queries. Break the orchestrator's dependency tree without causing a total collapse. Just enough chaos to make everything visible, to show the rot beneath the glitter. She added the final instruction, if $trigger equals true, then execute halt and end broadcast log snapshot. Then she wrapped it all in a one-liner toggle. Manual only, no cron, no trapdoor, because she needed to see it. Needed to feel her finger press the key, to watch it fall in real time. She tested it once in a shadow cluster. The output was poetry. Container logs flailing like fish in an empty barrel. Load balancers flipping in and out of memory, the analytics dashboard blinking 404 like a panicked heartbeat, and then silence, not destruction, exposure. She ran a checksum against the backup of prod. Perfect match. By midnight, she had encrypted the script, uploaded it to a personal repo on a USB key she wore as a necklace, and duplicated it across 2 virtual containers hosted under dummy billing accounts labeled Pet Project 42 and Legacy Petting Zoo. She leaned back, exhaled, and smiled for the first time in days. From now on, the game was binary. Either she'd be deleted from the system like deprecated middleware, or Blake would go down live in front of every investor, every coder, every reporter who ever thought Jurassic was a punchline. There was no third outcome, only execution. The day before the hackathon felt like standing on the lip of a volcano while everyone else set up lawn chairs and handed out marshmallows. Blake strutted into the war room with a startup founder swagger that would have made Adam Newman blush. The dev floor was buzzing, engineers hunched over laptops, UX folks rearranging CSS animations like they mattered, PMs holding emergency alignment stand-ups like they'd ever aligned with a deadline in their lives. Carmen had been invited to the investor preview, corporate politeness, more or less, probably someone in comms trying to look inclusive on paper. She accepted without hesitation and showed up dressed for a funeral. Black jeans, gray hoodie, her old badge on a fabric lanyard worn so thin it looked like it had survived a tour in Afghanistan. Big screen in the demo room displayed a slick interface with animated KPIs, flashy transitions, and a massive smart load AI dashboard pulsing in synthetic teal. The audience of suits, angel investors, a few graybeard VCs, and one grinning fintech influencer Carmen recognized from YouTube, watched as Blake glided through the room like a man born for tech's delusion. Welcome, welcome, he said, hands clasped like a cult leader with a cappuccino addiction. What you're about to see is our AI orchestration engine, live reacting to simulated client traffic in real time. What you won't see is how much legacy tech we had to surgically remove to make this magic possible. The word legacy hit like a sucker punch. Carmen smiled and took a sip of her flat office coffee. Surgically remove, huh? More like duct tape over a foundation you don't understand. As the fake demo ran, blinking and twinkling like a Gotham Vegas slot machine, Carmen flipped open her ThinkPad. Nobody noticed. Why would they? She wasn't on stage, she was furniture. The polite ghost of before times. She ran a silent script when she'd named Pulse Check to monitor whether the pre-rendered files matched what was displayed on screen. Of course they did. Every metric, every fake latency blip, every animated spike of load had been scripted like a Broadway dress rehearsal. Buttons weren't even wired to logic. They were UI triggers calling empty async wrappers. She logged it, screenshotted the client IPs, noted that half the users were hitting from localhost. Clown show, she muttered under her breath, then Slack pinged. Blake had posted in the hash demo prep channel. Assuming Carmen wouldn't see it, he must have thought she'd been scrubbed from the workspace or muted the channel herself. But her account was still ghost admin status. Nobody had revoked her legacy group privileges. Nobody ever checks the old admin lists. Tomorrow's gonna bury Jurassic once and for all. She'll be a footnote by lunchtime. Carmen didn't blink, she screenshotted it. dragged the PNG into her Blake Museum/Chapter 4 footnotes folder and annotated it. Exhibit D, the mouth writes checks the stack can't cache. That night, while the dev floor ordered sushi and Blake held a whiskey toast in the executive breakout room to the future of architecture, Carmen sat quietly at her desk, earbuds in, listening to a looped asthma track of typing and rain, white noise for war prep. She ran the final diagnostic on her kill switch. Checksum match. Execution path clean. Log footprint wiped post-run. Access logs routed through a disposable SSH tunnel pointed to a burn account. Auth keys, one use, self-expiring in 10 seconds after trigger. She even re-verified the failback script, the one that would make it look like an undocumented legacy quirk caused the crash and not intentional sabotage. A ghost in the code base, something plausible for PR to blame, something the board wouldn't question too deeply. She closed the lid of her ThinkPad, fingers resting on the cover like she was sealing a coffin. Tomorrow, she thought, watching the last Slack notification roll in, another emoji reaction to Blake's post. Tomorrow, the system doesn't crash. It exposes. Hackathon Day. The auditorium looked like a tech gospel tent, spotlights bouncing off branded lanyards, pop-up booths churning out merch like Code Hard or Die trying tote bags, interns in matching hoodies sprinting with surge protectors like caffeinated ants. Twitch was live. LinkedIn Live was pushing the stream to recruiters who didn't understand half the words, but knew AI meant clout. Carmen walked in without a badge check. No one stopped her. She blended in, wearing the same faded hoodie and dark jeans, just another mid-tier engineer here to witness the future trade. The camera crew had set up near the side exit, away from the stage, perfect view of the LED wall that would soon host Blake's AI infrastructure revolution. She took a seat behind the main camera operator, placed her ThinkPad on her lap, and opened it like a surgeon revealing a familiar blade. On stage, Blake appeared, again with the blazer and sneakers combo, as if he were giving a TED talk at Burning Man. The audience of devs and executives and sweat-glazed VCs erupted in applause like Pavlov's dogs for funding buzzwords. "Good morning, future makers," he shouted, arms wide, charisma bloated. "What you're about to see isn't just code, it's reinvention." Carmen cracked her knuckles once softly. "The platform we've built, leveraging AI orchestration, dynamic load shifting, and microservices, is unlike anything we've done before. We've cleaned out the cobwebs, paved over the ancient relics, and rebuilt from the core out." She smirked. Ancient relics? She was the damn museum architect. Blake walked over to a touchscreen and began the dance. User signups, smart routing, real-time error correction. All of it faked behind the curtain, a carefully choreographed lie built on pre-rendered responses and bot click loops. Then came minute 4, and now Blake grinned. We scaled to 10,000 concurrent users. The Twitch chat exploded in rocket emojis. LinkedIn reactions fluttered like confetti. Carmen shifted in her seat, fingers poised, a breath in. Tap, tap, that was it. 2 keystrokes, no flourish. No press enter dramatics. At first, nothing, just silence. Then the front-end demo interface froze mid-animation, user cards half-loaded, spinning wheels never resolving. A light cough rippled through the crowd. The touchscreen Blake was so proud of suddenly defaulted to a black screen with a blinking caret. In the ops pit backstage, dashboards lit up like a battlefield, memory leaks, service timeouts, dependency loops stalling out like vapor-locked engines. One intern's tablet showed a cascade of red error logs scrolling so fast they couldn't read a single line. Blake tapped the screen again. Nothing, tried to refresh. The UI responded with a 504 gateway timeout. The Twitch stream buffer icon spun, then stopped, the feed cut. On LinkedIn, the viewer count stalled, then dropped by the hundreds, then thousands. The silence in the room thickened, not panic, not yet, just a rising pressure of something's wrong and no one's breathing. Blake blinked, looked to the side stage where an engineer mouthed reboot. Carmen never looked up. Her laptop screen showed a clean kill switch log, execution confirmed. Orchestration halted, logs routed, her pulse was steady, her breath even. She felt like a sniper who'd spent hours in stillness just to fire one perfect shot. Across the room, someone whispered, "Did the AI just crash?" No, it didn't crash. It was revealed. Blake stumbled back from the touchscreen like it was radioactive. Someone in the audience coughed. Another dev dropped their energy drink. A woman from marketing slowly turned off her phone camera, sensing this wasn't going to make for a good case study. Carmen stood, quietly closed her laptop. She left the auditorium without a word. Behind her, the facade peeled away in real time, one frozen screen at a time, one blinking dashboard at a time. And Blake. He stood there alone, blazer wrinkling, sneakers squeaking slightly as he turned in place, staring into an audience that had stopped clapping. Blake's mouth opened and closed like a fish in a microwave. No sound came out, just the wet static of failed confidence. The touchscreen still blinked like a haunted terminal. The audience had turned, not with anger, but with something worse, confusion warping into suspicion. A dev near the back muttered, "Wasn't this pre-recorded?" Another whispered, "I thought it was AI-powered." And someone from the investor row leaned forward and hissed into their phone, "Pull out. Right now. Pull out." Backstage, a project manager made the mistake of refreshing the internal dashboard. Instead of user metrics, it showed a plain text log Carmen had left tucked neatly in the orchestration service. Orchestration halted source. /legacy/Jurassic/API/chorus trigger. Manual override note. If you fake evolution, expect extinction. It wasn't sabotage. It was a mirror. The dev team started whispering loudly. One intern dry heaved into a trash can. VP in platform strategy closed his laptop with the kind of finality normally reserved for closing caskets. Carmen didn't stick around to gloat. That wasn't the point. She walked out past security guards too glued to their earpieces to notice her. She passed HR reps dashing toward the auditorium with crisis flashcards and legal pads flapping like desperate wings. Nobody looked at her. Nobody saw her. That's how good she'd gotten at being invisible, until she wasn't. Outside, the late morning light hit her like absolution. She walked across the plaza, down the steps, around the corner to a public bench near the train station. Pigeons watched her like they knew something. She pulled out a battered Dell burner laptop from her old gym bag, booted it without fanfare. The OS was a Linux distro from 2013 that hadn't seen a GUI in years. No Wi-Fi auto-connect, no Bluetooth, just raw, deliberate action. From a cold storage USB, she dragged a single file onto the desktop. Jurassic evidence zip, she'd curated it like a museum exhibit. Logs proving Blake rerouted analytics to hide crashes. Screenshots of Slack conversations mocking QA reports. Video captures of the AI demo using canned outputs. Emails instructing devs to inflate and obfuscate performance metrics. Git commits with backdated timestamps and force-pushed branches. She opened her encrypted Proton mail. Entered the board's private contact aliases, still valid, thanks to an old executive crisis contact sheet she'd had saved under the name Meeting Notes August. Typed exactly 4 words in the subject line, for your quiet review. Attached the file, clicked send, and with it something left her. Some weight she hadn't noticed she'd been carrying since the first day she was told to just ship fast instead of build right. She sat back, letting the cold bench seep through her hoodie. 10 minutes later, her train pulled in. She boarded without looking back. No bags, no folders, just her ThinkPad and that weightless sense that something final had landed. As the train doors hissed shut, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her company badge, looked at it one last time, then laid it flat on the empty vinyl seat beside her. Just before the train pulled away, the sunlight caught it, the name, the barcode, faded company logo beneath the plastic. And then it was gone. By Monday morning, Blake Radner's face was gone. The leadership page on the company's website had been quietly scrubbed, leaving a clean whitespace gap between chief product officer and head of HR. No announcement. No thank you for your service post. Just digital vanishing, the corporate equivalent of burying the body under fresh asphalt. But not before the crater rippled through every layer. Someone leaked the evidence. Not Carmen. She didn't have to. Someone else cracked the zip file, maybe a board member, maybe a bitter engineer sick of Slack gaslighting, and fed it to a journalist with just enough ethics to fact-check and just enough ego to blow it wide open. The story trended by noon, AI smoke and server mirrors. Inside a startup's fake demo meltdown, VCs who had clapped and cheered 3 days earlier now played dumb. One released a statement saying they had serious concerns about data integrity. Another yanked funding mid-round and deleted every retweet of the demo. The board launched a rapid internal inquiry, which in corporate speak means burn the evidence before shareholders smell it. They blamed the crash on a legacy script that interfered with newer orchestration modules. Nobody could explain how it triggered. Nobody wanted to admit it even existed. They called it a legacy quirk. Some junior devs whispered that the whole thing was sabotage. Others swore Carmen had built a self-aware AI and turned it loose. A theory popped up on Reddit claiming the system had rejected Blake out of moral disgust. Carmen, she was already gone. No apartment forwarding address, no Twitter rants, no Medium blog post. She left behind no trace except the crater in the system and the uncomfortable silence it birthed. Somewhere in another city, gray brick, soft rain, coworking space that smelled like burnt coffee and bootstrap dreams, she sat quietly consulting for a fintech firm too small to care about her past, too smart to ask questions. She coded in peace, wore headphones at full volume, took lunch alone. Nobody recognized her. Nobody connected the dots, but someone hacked the company's Twitch archive of the hackathon stream, not to delete it, not to alter it, just to add a final post-credits message, right after the buffering error, after Blake's stunned silence, after the audio dropped out and the investors stormed off-screen, black screen, white text. Legacy systems don't crash, they choose extinction. It stayed up for exactly 10 seconds, then vanished forever. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.